The following is intended only for mature audiences.
Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann. Episode number 2 for Men's Mental Health Month, and I'd like to talk about who's responsible for the fight. Who started it? Now, you might think back to elementary school or even middle or high school. You get into arguments, you get into fights, you're arguing with a sibling back and forth, bickering, and the parents are like, well, I don't understand why you're doing this. And someone's like, they started it. I don't care who started it. It's going to end. And I have to tell you this, as an adult that constantly has to deal with a former partner that loves to stir shit up and always comes at me like a fucking turd-covered fastball over the plate trying to bean me in the fucking head, it very much does matter who started it.
Why?
Now, your parents are trying to not show favoritism, and maybe let's say it happens at school and it's a teacher saying the same thing. They don't want to pick a side, so they'll just punish everyone. Because they say it doesn't matter who started the fight because everyone's equally bad for fighting. But that's bullshit because even though saying they started it or he started or she started it seems like a childish response, if you have someone who is constantly starting shit with you and then you have others observe it like, man, they're always fighting. Imagine if you're the one that's always being attacked and now you're being asked to hold on to 50% of the responsibility when it is really 90-10.
Holy shit!
You've got someone that is constantly on your ass. No matter what you do, you cannot appease them. They're always blaming you for their problems, and they're coming at you just angry, and they're spitting nonsense and insults and trying to get under your skin. That person has a problem. You, on the other hand, are on the receiving end. You also have a problem, but it's different because you have a reactionary problem. You're defending yourself like, why the fuck are you treating me this way? I'm sick of your shit. And to say you got some bully that's like pushing you. Back in elementary school, they're shoving you. They're always fucking with you. And one day, they shove you and you pop them in the mouth. Ow! And the teacher sees this. But then you both get in trouble. Now, you shouldn't be fighting. And these days, oh my God, if you even fucking say you want to hit somebody, they want to send you to the fucking psych ward and say that you have an anger management problem. But in the reality is kids who are prone to not having control over their impulses will throw down much easier. And then some people just never outgrow that. But generally speaking, when you're younger is when you get into fights. If you're still getting into Donnybrooks when you're an adult, the problem is you. And just like in hockey, the ref might not see the infraction, but they'll see the retaliation, and then you go to the penalty box. Or maybe they see both, and you both go and sit for 2.5 to 5 fucking minutes. It's ridiculous. So when you've got someone that is always starting shit with you in your life, and in this example, it's my daughter saying, I'm sick of you and mom fighting, and I have to defend myself to teachers and doctors and mental health professionals that are just like, well, you just need to stop fighting. It's like, you don't fucking understand. I'm not the one starting it. The other person is always the one that loses their cool, starts swearing and name-calling, trying to push my buttons, and saying really shitty things to try to get under my skin and then hanging up. It's very fucking childish. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, obviously it's
The Beast.
And unfortunately, I keep throwing myself onto this pile of broken glass to try to save myself by telling people, she starts 90% of the fights. I start maybe 10% because I'm just sick of the shit and I got to get a point across and I don't care if it sets her off because everything sets her off. And if you have someone in your life like that who's always the aggressor, to have a paraprofessional or medical professional or psych professional say, well, it doesn't matter who started it. Yes, it fucking does. It's the reason that the term cycle of abuse exists. It's the reason that we hold people accountable for shitting all over everybody around them. Now, back to this instance of the teacher who's like, it doesn't matter who started it. Well, everybody has the right to be respected if they're respectful. But if you have someone who's constantly disrespecting you, wouldn't it make sense that you're going to, I won't say retaliate, but stick up for yourself and tell them to knock it off in an effort to try to protect yourself? So they might say, well, you're just as bad for lashing out back. But no. And as a society, we've lost focus of the very important fact that if you've got somebody that is shoving people, calling them names, treating them shitty, they have personality and behavioral issues, they're the problem, not both of you. And I use the harmless school example because it really bothers me that these people will sit there and say, you need to just let it go. You guys need to stop fighting. Can't you do it for your daughter? Like, I fucking can't, because I'm trying to defend myself. I'm trying to basically fight for my own comfort because I'm constantly being attacked. And then worse off, I'm being told that when I say I'm being attacked, I'm told that I just like to blame everybody else for my problems, which I don't fucking do. I will take accountability when I fuck up. I fall on my sword whenever I need to. But that's just the same old shit from the previous episode with the Darvo tactic, reversing the victim and offender dynamic. So you got kids, and they grow up to be shitty adults that don't know how to control themselves. And you take this schoolyard example and you apply it to higher stakes, up to the point of war, basically, right? Look at what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine. It was Russian aggression that led to a crossing into the Ukraine and then attacking civilians and slaughtering them and blowing up all kinds of buildings and hurting people. Russia is the aggressor. It very much matters who started it. Do you think that if another country joined in the Holocaust after the Nazis had been at it for like 2 years? Now, they also committed war crimes, right? But Hitler started it with his final solution talk. All of that genocide against the Jews that he pushed for. He started it. Imagine if you're in the UFC and you're fighting and somebody pokes you in the eyes twice or kicks you in the groin and tries to play it off like it's no thing. And then you kick them in the groin. Well, they might have lost a point or you're both going to get warned, but they started it, right? They're the one that's trying to throw you off your game. Well, you got to be smarter than that and not react. And it's really fucking hard when someone is pushing your buttons to keep your cool. But I guess when you're a veteran like I am of years of goddamn emotional abuse from a parent and a former partner, you just kind of grow numb to the trauma. And you stand there like, this doesn't surprise me anymore. This is like when I'd watch the final seasons of Breaking Bad and there'd be all these curveballs and surprises like, oh my God, moments. And I'm just like, well, of course there are. That's what the show is known for. I'm impressed with the storytelling, but I'm not at all surprised that a story about a man who decided to start cooking and selling drugs to get money to give to his family ended up having a not so happy ending to his story, right? So now let's dial it back. I talked about war, but I said there's higher stakes in adult life. In a fight, if somebody walks up and starts punching you and kicking you and shoving you, and then you kick them or hit them or shove them to get them away from you, and say a boss or a teacher or a policeman sees it, there is a reason we have the concept of self-defense. There was a time, December of 2010,
The Beast
and I went out to dinner. I was trying to get her to stop drinking so much because she has problems with fights when she's drunk. And she was going to honor that, and I said you could have 1 glass of wine. We agreed on that. Then it became 2, and like always, she's pushing for more. She went into the bar, ran into her brother and his girlfriend at the time, had a shot, had a beer, came back. And then by the time we got home, and I put the baby in the crib and went back out to get her from the car because she fell asleep, I opened the door, I went to take off her seatbelt, and I tried to pull her arm to nudge her to get out of the car. And she's like, don't fucking, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. And I'm like, well, don't fucking do it in my car. And I pulled on her, and she basically had a blackout anger fit and then violently attacked me. Now she shoved me, she kicked me, she spit in my face, and all I did was shove her to the ground to get her away from me to create distance because she was trying to hurt me. She was also trying to kick out the patio door in the apartment to get to the baby, and I couldn't have that because who fucking knows what that dingy drunken bitch would have done if she would have got her hands on our daughter, who was only like 2 months old at the time, I'd like to add. So in that instance, it was self-defense. There was a guy in high school one time. He's pissed at me for something I allegedly said. He's like, well, let's take it outside. I'm like, yeah, let's fucking do that. And we go outside, and he's shoving me, and he's shoving me, and he's shoving me. I punched him. And then a teacher saw it as he's trying to punch me back, and we both got in trouble. But he fucking started it. Should I have gone outside? Absolutely not. In hindsight, that was immature, but I was standing up for myself because I was willing to have the conversation, and I didn't want a teacher to overhear us arguing and then yell at us before we could solve the problem. Because that's what society really wants. Everybody behaved, everything copacetic, the cops show up, they don't care half the time what's going on in a domestic. They just want to calm you down and get the fuck out of Dodge. You might remember this example where a few years back, Steiny, my co-host, his wife did not get along with the mother of his son.
My son.
And baby mama shows up, and she talks some shit, and she opens their screen door, walks into the house, and tries to start a fucking fight. Now, she got in trouble and got trespassed and eventually ended up with a fucking restraining order. And yeah, while they were standing there in the entryway, Steiny was in between them trying to get him to calm down, and both the ladies were trading barbs. But baby mama showed up, and she's the one who fucking started it. That's why it's important. If I tell somebody that I'm sick to death of constantly being verbally abused, at no time should they say, well, you still got to think about the kids. No. I am thinking about the kids by setting an example for standing up for myself to pinpoint who's the aggressor in this situation so they can be held accountable. And hopefully, you would think, after enough time passes and a number of examples that are all eerily similar, that person, if they don't have their screws loose or fucking damage to their brain from methamphetamine use, would figure it out and go, oh my God, I'm the piece of shit. Now, interesting wrinkle, there was an incident about a month and a half ago, and I won't get into the particulars yet because I'm saving it for a future episode where I tell you the story of this weekend from hell. I am on the phone with
The Beast.
And she seems weird. She sounds vulnerable, which is not her. And she's not flipping out and being argumentative. So I'm like, what the hell's going on with you? You sound off. Well, what do you mean? Well, you're not yelling at me and calling me a piece of shit every 30 seconds. She's like, well, maybe I realized I'm the piece of shit. And I so wanted to believe that maybe that was the watershed moment where she crosses the threshold of self-awareness and stops being such a redonkulous amount of cunt all the time. But wouldn't you know it, she's back on her bullshit a few days later and nothing has fucking changed in that 45-day window or so, whenever since it happened, and she's still her same self. Now, here I am, having to tell doctors I'm not the one that starts the fights. I'm having to tell teachers, I know that my daughter says that she's sick of her parents fighting, but what if I'm not the one who starts it? What if I'm the one that's being attacked? And they don't want to choose sides because it's kind of like my word against hers. But if my kid, who's 12, would actually acknowledge it, it'd very easily be from examples that the kid could cite. Their mom is the aggressor. My 14-year-old? No. She knows full damn well that her mom is the one that has the issue, and she's always starting shit. Both my kids know, and everybody that is my friend and has been around long enough to have met my mom or heard enough stories knows that she's the one that has the issues with crossing boundaries and speaking her piece when she shouldn't and shooting her fucking mouth off. And I will light her up. But it's not reactive abuse. It's me sticking up for myself and calling my mom on her shit, which she does not like. And you will find that somebody who truly is responsible for the fight needs to be held accountable, and when they're held accountable, they usually, because they do it all the time, especially if they're an adult, they're comfortable being an asshole like this, they will sit there and act like you're the bad guy. And how could you talk to me this way? I'm not going to put up with this. Well, I'm not going to put up with your shit either, so I guess we're at a fucking standstill. Now, I'm just going to say this, I'm old school. If somebody gets in your face and they start shoving you or punching you, knock them the fuck out, but cut yourself off before it becomes way too overly retaliation-based and you do something like you get them on the ground, you start stomping on their head. If somebody fucks with you, fuck with them back. But do it in a fashion that's constructive. If somebody takes a swing at you, duck the punch and stick them in the chin with a fucking stiff uppercut. Put them on their ass. And then just stand there and look at them while they're on the ground with their head kind of woozy like, yeah, what the fuck did you think was going to happen? And talk a little shit and then leave. Or you could be like me and say, now, you and I both know that this isn't the end of it in your head, but it's the end of it in my head. And if you want the end of you to come sooner, let this continue. I've said things like that with people, but I've also said, now we had a disagreement today, right? Yeah. Okay, but that's the end of it. Tomorrow's a new day. Calendar flips. I don't care anymore. Let it roll off your back the way I do, and things will be a hell of a lot nicer around here for you. And that's how I got through to people that mouthed off of me when I was a correctional officer and got them back on my side. Because they would sit there and go, oh my God, he's actually being really level-headed about this. And they'd usually acknowledge it was their fault and they'd apologize. And then we'd end up becoming almost buddy-buddy. And there'd be this new shared mutual respect because I earned it by not sinking to their level. And despite the fact that a lot of dumb fucking people get in trouble and go to jail, there are a lot of intelligent people that make mistakes and end up behind bars once, maybe twice in their life. And you got to give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe they're not one of those fucking retards that's always getting busted driving without a license with a meth pipe in their pocket. Maybe they just had too many drinks after a birthday party, got pulled over, and that's why they're seeing me and why we're having this conversation, and they were having a bad day, and then they apologize, they explain themselves, I acknowledge it, and everything's hunky-fucking-dory afterwards. And that's why I like to think that after 11 years of working behind the walls there, nobody ever took a swing at me. But of course, I have to be devil's advocate here and throw myself on my sword and admit that there was that time I got in trouble for cocking off at the mouth to an inmate who started some shit with me, and my boss and administration didn't care who started it because they have a higher standard for their officers and how they behave. So that's why government work is bullshit, because it doesn't matter that if some inmate fucking talks shit to you, or if you're a council member and somebody comes in and calls you a bunch of names at a council meeting, you can't tell them to go fuck themselves, or tell them, like I did to the inmate, you have tougher kernels of corn in your crap than them. Because as witty of a retort as that is, it really doesn't go over well when you're sitting down in HR.
Oh, really?
Wrapping this up, if you are somebody that is initiating arguments or verbal confrontations or physical altercations, you need to stop. And you definitely can't play the victim if somebody retaliates or lashes out back at you for treating them like shit. And if you observe two people getting into it, there's a reason the cops will go to a house when there's a domestic and separate the parties and not let them talk. And then they'll swap who they're talking to and then see how the stories compare so they can establish who is the aggressor. Because to cops, it is important if two people were arguing, let's say the guy was drunk and he said a bunch of shit and the wife said some shit back and they're like, hey, Elkie, get the fuck out of here. You started it. It happens. Be cognizant of the fact that you have a right to defend yourself physically and against people's accusations if they're not true, or if somebody constantly verbally abuses you, they're the one that is the agitator. They're the one that's the antagonist. Go nuts, but within reason. And never be afraid to advocate for yourself if your behavior is being equated to equally as shitty as a person that is attacking you all the time like I have to deal with. Just say, I'm not the one that starts it, and as the victim on the receiving end of all the verbal abuse, I would appreciate it if you did not try to equate our behavior evenly, because you are basically just making me feel like shit all over again and invalidating my feelings. And that is not fucking cool when I'm the one that's put up with it for 15 years. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.